afternoon, everyone. The attendance has gone, in decrease front. What was there in the first day and today? Probably, I hope people will turn up at least to take the exams and certificate. This is not new, but what we are going to discuss today is probably we will discuss beyond what we have discussed in general about outsourcing, offshore outsourcing. But today we are going to talk more about not only the current trend, but also what is the trend when we talk about offshore outsourcing with regard to India, in Indian context. So IT offshore outsourcing, typical offshore outsourcing, why offshore outsourcing, challenges and potential solution for offshore outsourcing, and IT outsourcing challenges to watch in 2017. Okay. Just give me a moment. And as far as our today's group discussion is concerned, we are going to talk about the problems and prospects of business process outsourcing industry as a case study of India, where we will take up business process outsourcing and also understand the outsourcing being taken place in the financial services sector. So, and by going through both these case studies, we will try and understand how business process outsourcing is different to financial services outsourcing, and some of the implications emerging from the case which we are going to discuss. Outsourcing is nothing new now for you, because that's what we have been discussing from last 4 days. So it traces its early origin in Industrial Revolution, but it was only towards the late 80s that it came to be accredited as a full-fledged business strategy. And at present, no industry has been left untouched by the gargantuan outsourcing waves and fancy monikers like all these different types of outsourcing that we have seen and discussed at length during our discussion in the last 4 days. Apart from all the outsourcing, nearshoring, offshoring, BPO, we also have the specific outsourcing of knowledge processes, and we call it as KPO, knowledge process outsourcing. So somebody one day, some of you were talking about, it's not a prestigious job for us to work in BPOs in India, because people don't see you with regard, because this is not a job that that's respected and that you are expected to do after graduating with degree like BTech and MBA. But when we talk about KPO, this is a very respectful job. And actually the trend shows that, and the research indicates that India is slowly and steadily moving from the BPO phase to the KPO phase. So then the question is, then what kind of support services would be considered as KPO? Can you think about and tell me what kind of services you possibly think in terms of KPO, where knowledge is something which is given more significance, more importance, and it is not merely doing the job of supporting the IT services, in which probably you don't need to put in your brain much. So when we think about KPO, we can think about more knowledge-intensive outsourcing processes. And I'm sure you would have heard about the upcoming buzzwords in today's context as far as outsourcing is concerned, and alignment of outsourcing with the Indian talent pool that we have. And one of those things I can think of is big data, let's say. So you must have heard about big data. So if we are involved as a big data analysts or data scientists, this is not a job which could be done by anyone. So how this big data job is different from the simple business process outsourcing job? Because it requires enhanced skills, analytical, statistical, mathematical ability, and on top of it, you need the technical skills to perform your job in terms of writing programs, executing algorithm, and supporting your clients. So, slowly, given that we have a lot of graduates coming up with vast knowledge grounded in mathematics, statistical analysis, that's what we are known for. So why not go ahead and serve the clients in capacity of data scientist rather than being called as call center employee, right? So that is something which is very emerging and coming up quite fast. And another one is LPO. Have you heard of legal process outsourcing? So this is again related to outsourcing of work, which is more into the legality aspects and consider all the regulations and legal aspects. So that is a specific part of business process outsourcing. So these are some of the current trends in terms of BPO, which is little deviated from the basic concepts of BPO, because whenever we call the term, we consider the term BPO, mainly what we perceive from it is it's call center job, and that's what it is, because majority of jobs are call center jobs. So we are moving differently in terms of serving for the clients in terms of knowledge processes. They are of course business processes, but the level of business services that we provide is different and definitely of respectable level. The illustrious journey of outsourcing began with manufacturing sector and has ramified gradually into the sectors of banking, pharmaceuticals, hospitality, and information technology, and so on. There are numerous such examples where business processes have been outsourced. The providers have taken different domains and provide services on all these domains related to IT-enabled services, and so on. So outsourcing has definitely provided corporations around the globe with much sought-after cost-saving finesse and peace of mind to focus on core activities, but along with it comes some pestering challenges. So we have discussed about all these different types of outsourcing and the advantages that we get out of outsourcing, but along with advantages, we have also to accept the challenges and disadvantages, although we have discussed some of them, but we will once again reiterate some of these challenges, particularly in context of India, and then we'll move on and see how India is able to somehow overcome some of these challenges, and what are the current trends of challenges in business process outsourcing in India. So I'm not going in detail of some of these points because we have already covered it. So we also discussed that, when we talk about offshore outsourcing in India, it is mainly related to programming, because programming doesn't have any cultural barrier. No matter whether I program here or any part of the world, the programming language will remain the same, irrespective of who is programming. So the major reason of offshore outsourcing related to technology is our skilled workforce and the outsourcing companies' trust on India's talent pool. As per CIO research report, this is one of Wall Street journals, and as per its report, 86% of respondents, when the research was performed based on data collected from respondents who were service recipients in the USA, 86% of them said that they currently outsource application development, and 26% move call center offshore to the different parts of the world. Other activities frequently sent offshore including system administration, help desk, business processes, and so on. So it is still majority of the outsourcing companies outsourcing their work related to technology enhancement and support and services, and majority of the respondents said that they are involved in one or the other form into offshore outsourcing. As we have already discussed, China is undoubtedly one of the destinations for offshore outsourcing, but it is a favorite destination in terms of product outsourcing rather than service outsourcing. We have also discussed about why a recipient or the company should go for offshore outsourcing, and some of these points we have already discussed in our previous deliberations. Lower labor and operational cost is the prime reason why companies or clients go for outsourcing. To provide a buffer capital fund to companies that could be leveraged in a manner that best profits the company. So what is meant by buffer capital? What do you think? But where from these buffer capital come to the company? By cost saving, right? So let's say you have offshored your work and you have saved some of your cost, and then you have kept it as a buffer capital, and then you spend that buffer capital for the purpose of improving the other different aspects of your organization, right? So that is called buffer fund, and that fund will be available more to you only when you save cost. Otherwise, you need to generate additional money in order to have the cost, means that fund available to invest in the other parts of the functioning of your company. So you will be able to save more cost, have more buffer capital to use it for the overall development of your company, to remain focused on company core business. And that's why most of the companies are offshore. One of the reasons why they're offshore, because they want to focus more onto their core businesses. To tap into and leverage a global knowledge base, having access to world-class base, having access to world-class capabilities. So, problem, okay. Go on. Restart. Why the companies go for offshoring? Because they think that whatever skills, whatever capabilities they have in-house probably may not be enough, adequate to provide the same sort of service that you are going to get outside, because those providers are skilled and specialized, and that's why they are providing the services for a specific domain and a specific business processes. So one of the reasons why companies go outside to tap some of the global workforces who are specialized in the business processes for which you want the service. So that's their freeing up internal resources that could be put in effective use for other purposes. So whatever resources are freed up from by transferring your service outside the organization, you can effectively use those resources for the improvement of other parts of the country, means other parts of the business, and then those other business departments, the other business processes which have not been outsourced may get improved by putting in additional work resources. So these are some of the reasons why you want to largely go for offshore outsourcing. Now, when we talk about India, what do you think, what are the key challenges? Some of the generic key challenges that we have discussed for a company, no matter wherever it is located at, to outsource its business processes to not only to India but to any part of the world, there are some key challenges. But most of them also applicable to India, although there are some challenges which we have over the period of time endeavored to overcome, and that's the reason why most of the outsourcing recipients are attracted toward Indian service providers to get their services. So first is finding the right outsourcing partner. Finding the right outsourcing partner has been always a challenge for the clients, right, or the outsourcing company, because unless you have found the right outsourcing partner, you may not be able to have your services, seamless services, being delivered to you by the partners or the service provider, and at the end the overall result is the failure of the service providers in terms of providing you the service, expected level of service. So it's very important for Indian service providers, outsourcing service providers, also not only to mature themselves in terms of getting certification, but also to expose themselves to the outside world that they could be potentially the worthy service provider to provide the expected level of services, right? Currently, there is an organization called NASSCOM, which is responsible for taking some of the CMMI 5 level companies to introduce to some of the leading companies in America. They are anyway exposed to the international market, and because of that they get the different services from America, because America is the largest basically the outsourcing client from where we get services in India. But what happens to the medium-sized enterprises or the small industry for which there is no exposure? The companies, outsourcing companies in America or any other parts of the world, don't know that what level of services you can provide, how capable you are. So exposure of those service providers are also required, and probably the initiative can also be taken by government to expose these service providers at the international platform. So it is not only important for the client or the outsourcing company to go and find, because there are n numbers of outsourcing service provider available to the developing part of the world. Why any client would go and get service from you? There should be some sort of relationship, some linkages by which the company gets to know about you, and then you start providing services. So that thing is lacking, particularly in Indian context, where the companies should expose themselves, probably because they don't find ways how to reach out to those companies in America from where they could possibly get business. So this is very important, and that remains the challenge for offshore outsourcing when we talk it in context of India. Sometimes attitude toward work is also a factor, like a challenge for companies to attract the potential outsourcing clients. Like, this is a matter of goodwill that you have established over the period of time with some companies, and through word of mouth and electronic word of mouth, the companies get to know about you, and then you can serve for many other companies. But what happens if the employee's negative attitude, arrogance, ignorance, lethargic attitude result in failure of some of those services being outsourced from the developed world? Probably you are not going to get further work from the clients, and so that results into adverse outcome to the service providers in India. So attitude of employee, submissive, culturally you have try and fill that gap which is there between the people, customers, other stakeholders from developed world and you. And also, if you are not able to understand the accent, you have, as a company, also have the responsibility to try and neutralize that gap as much as possible. And for that, the company should do some accent neutralization training program. I don't know, all these things should be there, so that if the service provider gets irritated firstly because of the lack of all these issues, lack of understanding the accent and all, then your behavior, your attitude should be very submissive and polite. So, by looking around, all the issues which can affect employees' attitude should also be taken care of. So, attitude is very important. Being calm and quiet, provide service at the expected level, and at the same time, the employer's responsibility to take care of employees' welfare and their skill development. Understanding the scope of work. Understanding, it's very important for any service provider to understand the scope of the work right at the beginning, because we have seen that the major reason why the outsourcing relationship fails is because the service level agreement is not very clearly written and agreed upon. So it's very important early on, both for provider and for the client, to find and to drill more into the hidden costs related with the outsourcing, overall outsourcing contract, and then agree upon all different flexibility that could be needed in order to sort out those issues. If these issues are not taken care of, you don't try and understand the scope of the entire work early on, that will definitely result into the failure in long term between the relationship of client and service provider. So you need to have a proper and effective plan in place before you go for outsourcing contract and signing the service level agreement. Defining objectives, targets, detailed documentation and explanation of a scope of each task and techniques to deal with complicated requirements are imperative for overall success. So you need to be very clear about what are the objectives, goals set by the outsourcing client, and how they are, and with what span of time they are expected to be delivered back to the outsourcing client by the service provider. And if the scope, goals and objectives are very clear, you are definitely going to succeed in terms of providing services to the client. Quality of work. Quality of work is again a challenge. How a client or the outsourcing company would make sure before going for the contractual obligation that they are going to get the expected level of quality of work. How would you identify and evaluate whether the service provider would be able to sufficiently stand out on the expectation of the recipient? What are the measures? How would you get to know that the service provider you have selected, you have opted for, will provide you the service that you have expected from it? What measures? What are the measures for quality service that the service provider is going to provide to you, to an outsourcing company? How would you make sure that you will get the quality service? Yeah. Who will give the training? Yeah. But job shadowing or any other measures that you want to take, that you would think only when you have already signed the agreement, right? But even before signing the agreement, what other measures? You will see the certification, capability, maturity level and all that, right? So that is there. And also, if you have been in the contractual relationship with the service provider from quite some time, and if you want to outsource some of your other business processes, then you will also think about whether the service provider has delivered to the business processes that you outsourced earlier, or any other company which is getting currently the service from the existing service provider. What quality of service the other companies are getting? What is the accuracy level? What is the quality level? Right? What was the turnaround time for the outsourced services delivered by the provider to the client and all that? So there are different ways in which you can measure the quality, overall quality of the service provider, and then you can move ahead and sign contract for for getting service for other tasks, business processes, or other functionalities which you want to outsource. So more complex leads to more chances of error. With proper communication, this gap can be reduced considerably. So you will also talk to the service provider. And as you have said that there are different certification level, and you will definitely go and see what level of maturity your service provider has obtained, whether the service provider has got the expertise and knowledge of the domain where you want to outsource your service or not, right? So ISO, Six Sigma, CMM certifications are some of the examples for you to see whether your vendors are capable of providing you the adequate quality of service. Meeting deadlines is a challenge, and this is a very often occurring challenge when it comes to the recipient-vendor relationship in context of offshore outsourcing. And majority of the projects actually get failed right in the middle or by the time it is delivered, because the projects are not able to be delivered on time. Often it senses one or the other form of project-related issues, errors, bugs, and for that it needs to be delayed. So it's very important for the service provider to strictly adhere to the project deadlines and timelines which you have agreed with your outsourcing company. And not only that, you are delivering the project right, at the time when you have agreed, but also you have to make sure that you are delivering the quality service, bug-free project services at the end. Otherwise, there is one recent example of British Airline services, means the collaboration of British Airline and Indian outsourcing companies, where British Airline outsourced some of its business processes, and the services delivered by British Airline actually by Indian service provider back to British Airline, it is stopped. And that business process was directly linked to the booking of reservation booking of the passengers. So because of that, the passengers who booked their ticket, they were not able to get anything out of the system because the system got stuck, and so they were stranded to the different airports in Britain and other parts of the world for about 30-40 hours unless the system came to function once again. So who is the sufferer because of the critical business processes which are outsourced, on which the customers are completely dependent on? And not only customers, this is very vital for the company, because the company's business is directly linked to those sort of vital service processes, right? Modules. And if it stops working, then the business is not going to run. It has to shut its door. And that's what happened in case of British Airline. And this outsourcing was done in India. So you have to make sure that how you are meeting the deadline, and not only meeting the deadline, when it comes to the critical process, how effective your delivered process is, whether it is able to work with the existing platform, existing systems, the existing technologies. And if not, and if you have not got the backup ready, and if you are confident enough that the new system is going to run the same way as it was running before, and if unfortunately because of any bug or error, despite all your alpha beta testing, if it doesn't work, then the customers are going to suffer. The customers will sue the company for that. Not only the company is losing business, but also the company has to pay back to the customers because they're not meeting the expectations, and because of that, customers have also lost millions of pounds. So who is responsible for that? Meeting the deadlines and delivering the quality service back to the client. Of course, the service provider. So you have to make sure that the services that you are delivering back to the outsourcing company is free of bug and quality proof, delivered on time, and you have to make sure that it runs without any error, any obstacles back on the existing platform. Language is again a problem, and that we have already discussed. But in context of India, when we see this factor language, it is not as much a problem as it could probably be for China, or for that matter other countries where the not many people are proficient in terms of communication. So, but still, because we deal in majority with the call center employees, and when we hire employees to provide service, we don't actually go in depth to understand the quality of service being provided, what kind of services would be provided by the employees that you have hired. And sometimes we undermine the quality of people that we are going to hire, and because of that, not always the companies are able to get satisfied with the quality of people who are working in call centers and replying for the services for the customers from across the different countries in Western culture. So language is not that a big problem for Indian IT offshore service providers, but it is still a problem. It is often a matter of concern for Western countries, and they have to deal with the English-speaking people with the accurate accent. If not, then at least, to a certain level, the matching accent. So there is one quote here, which I will just go through, and from there you will get to know how important language is in terms of offshore IT outsourcing. It is saying, after an onslaught of complaints, computer maker Dell stopped using a technical support center in India. Okay? I'm reading the quotes. It is saying, after an onslaught of complaints, computer maker Dell stopped using a technical support in India to handle calls from its corporate customers. So Dell has two different types of customer. One is the individual customer to who Dell sells its computers and other peripherals. The other segment of customers for Dell is the corporate customer. So this quote is coming from the Dell's website, and it's saying that after an onslaught of complaints, computer maker Dell stopped using a technical support center in India to handle calls from its corporate customers. Some US customers complained that the Indian technical support representatives were difficult to communicate with because of thick accents and scripted responses. Corporate customers account for about 85% of Dell's business, with only 15% coming from the consumer market. So you can understand, out of the overall business for Dell, 85% of its customers are corporate customers. Only 15% are individual customers. And they actually stopped working with Indian service provider because of the complaints from majority of customers saying that they are not able to understand the accent from Indian employees. And by getting so many complaints, Dell had to eventually close the relationship with the Indian outsourcing company, right? So it is not that language is not a problem. Yes, when you are talking one-to-one, you may be, to a certain extent be able to understand and convince, and then individual customers will never go and take all the pain to complain again to the Dell office that I couldn't get. But when it comes to corporate level services, these are very sensitive services, and if you are not able to provide the adequate information, responses to all the queries that they are asking, they are going to complain, because their businesses are completely dependent on the services they are getting from the call centers, BPOs. And because of this, they had to stop their services which they were getting from Indian service provider. Communication is another challenge. Communication between the client and the vendor is crucial to achieve success, and that you have seen in our previous discussion how crucial and vital communication is between the two parties. Failure to develop an effective communication program can put the complete assignment in danger, right? If you don't have the proper communication, effective communication with your service provider, it is not going to go for long, because communication is the key to success. If there is a communication breakdown, or if you are not able to understand your, effectively your service provider, the overall purpose of getting service is, to get it through effective communication. If it is not there, you are not going to survive for long, because now in the current context, all these services are provided to the remote, outsourcing clients through internet and through effective communication. Yes, you are providing solution, but who will provide support unless you have the communication going between, provider and recipient? No matter whether you have provided them the quality service, still it's not going to make more difference, because it is not only about the service, it's not only about its quality, but also about how effectively you are able to convince the customer and satisfy their queries when there is any issue, or if any issue arises. For that, if it is, you are lacking as a service provider in terms of providing effective communication, you need to make sure that you have the clear communication channels, standardizing formats of content, regular interactions of predefined timings, and some of the key elements of overcoming barriers for communication. And that's why we have said that when we talk about the effective communication between recipient and client, it has to be on a regular basis, and that's why it is a part of service level agreement. Because if you have in the agreement, you have said that you are going to have a frequent communication, back and forth communication, proper meeting, and the updates from the service provider's end after every certain period of time, then you have to keep it going. You have to keep it continuing, to make sure that the communication is happening firstly, and it is taking place effectively. Time zone difference is, as we have seen, that it is one of the barriers for service providers. But we have also discussed that time zone difference could also be considered as an advantage, right? In what context it could be considered as a barrier or as an advantage, right? What do you think? In what way you can consider time zone as a barrier, and in what context it could considered as an advantage? Particularly when you are operating from India, let's say, to America, where the difference is about 11-12 hours. So in what way you think it is an advantage, and how it could be a disadvantage at the same time zone difference?
So, as compared to labor cost in between America and India, they are saving. But in context, from only in India, they are spending more, because for time zone, say night shift, they have to pay extra to the employee.
Yes.
The market timing of these two zones are too different.
Yes. Yeah. And this you consider this as a disadvantage, or?
Yes, sir. Like
Yeah, that's why he is saying that night shift probably will work. Night shift will work, but you need to pay more to the employees in order to make them work in the night, during the night time. So that could be a disadvantage. But can you also think of this time zone difference as an advantage, both for client as well as for provider? Yeah, so this is kind of 24/7 work without putting in much effort, even though you know you don't want to. And in what sector, what kind of outsourcing you think this kind of work will best fit in? Yeah, it is definitely offshore related work, right? Because when you are working. When you're working during day shift here, by the time you go off, you just transfer that, whatever updated application that you have worked on, to the American team, and then they will take up from there and then start building on it from there. But there is a glitch in there, if there has to be any confirmation, or anything that is needed in order for them to go forward and develop and build on application on whatever they have left in India. And if the people, or a group of people who were involved in developing that application, is not available during night time, then what will happen? Yeah, so it's not quite communication, is it? It's communication problem will arise only when you communicate, but there is a complete, breakdown of communication. So probably in majority of the cases where the application development is traditional in nature, where the team sitting in India and America, they know what they are working, and they know even if there is any issue arises in the software application, they are skilled enough to handle it at the other point, then there is no problem. But if that's not the case, means if they are working on two different types of problems, right, and they are not expert of each other's work, then that could possibly be a problem. But they have to tackle that issues again, as we have discussed, by sending few people to train and understand each other work. But still, time zone difference is both a curse and a boon for offshore outsourcing. Cultural difference, we have seen how it has been barrier for offshore outsourcing, and that applies to India as well. Yeah. Yes. चला गया इसका बैटरी जा रहा है. Yes. Cultural difference is again an issue, and we have discussed about it. Confusion and lack of clarity, lack of trust, because you belong to two different cultures. It's not easy early on to mingle up so easily and try and trust each other. So that is again an issue. And unclear and inadequate communication, that can happen because you don't tend to mingle up to the other team too frequently, and you try and avoid that as far as you can, and because of that, again, that affects negatively to the overall health of the offshore outsourcing in terms of the long-term relationship between the client and the provider. Accents and dialects. Americans may consider raised voices to be a sign that a fight of argument is on, while Indians feel that an increase in pitch is a sign of exciting conversation among friends. So you can understand the way how they think. So this is all about how you understand each other's body language, their gesture, posture, and understand their languages as well. In what way, what is assumed, what is actually, in what way it is accepted by the other, and that all depends on what culture you are. So again, we have said that this barrier could be minimized by trying to arrange some meeting, providing some training and support program, right? Accent neutralization training, all sorts of things could probably bring the cultural gap to a minimal level. And less productivity as well, because transferring knowledge to the vendor at different culture is costly and time-consuming affair, and that will negatively impact on the productivity. Bleeding off in-house human resources. What is this? Bleeding off in-house human resources, right? The literal meaning of bleeding of in-house human resources is that you sweat, or you are very stressed that your job is going to go away when outsourcing is taking place. So this is very natural for the employees who have spent their life working for the different departments, working on different processes, and then all of a sudden the top management decides to outsource that process. Now what will they do? So this is company's responsibility. This is a big challenge, right? This is a challenge for the outsourcing company to take care of its employees, right? And try and put them into the other departments or wherever they think that particular employee can fit in to the department. If required, provide them the training, all the different supports that the employee need to have for this transition from one department to the other, so that they feel comfortable and they don't get stressed, because that eventually results in high employee attrition, high turnover of employee, and that again is not favorable for any company. But if you don't have any other option, you lay off employees at the end, and this affects the companies negatively. Not particularly in case of the software development, because employees also don't mind, because they have high possibility of getting the similar job, probably the better job, in the other company, because it is not one-day phenomenon. If you have started thinking of outsourcing, it takes few months to do that, and then when you have initiated the process, you tend to inform the employees so that they can also think of alternative options. So in some cases, it's still a problem where you think that it will be difficult for the employee to go and get any other opportunity in the market. So this is company's responsibility to take care of employees if they feel and think that this is the right time for outsourcing some or all of their business processes. Selecting the right service provider, that we have been iterating and reiterating again and again, because this is pretty much related to how the company is going to perform in the long run. If you fail right at the first stage and not be able to select the right service provider, you have to suffer at each and every step from there on, because your company's performance, efficiency of your business, your customer experience, your customer satisfaction all depends on what you have outsourced and who you have outsourced it to. So vendors should be selected strictly according to the requirement of the organization and desired output needed. Before signing the dotted line, business owners should be sure to ascertain the type and nature of the contract. So before you go and sign the final agreement, you have to make sure that who you are going to sign it with, and whether the service provider is capable enough to provide you service in the future. After implementation, key performance indicators should be monitored frequently, and the balanced scorecard. Have you heard of balanced? What it is used for? Objective setting. So it's a kind of tool which evaluate not only objective setting, but it will tell you and evaluate and measure the performance of the service provider. So it's a kind of a statistical tool, a method by which you get to know periodically what quality of service you are getting, right? So right from the objective setting, it helps you quantitatively to measure the potential ability, capability, and performance of the service provider. Legal tangle and lack of understanding of the contract. If the legal implications of the contract are vague to both the organization and the service provider, it will fizzle out the initial hoopla surrounding the outsourcing decision. So particularly when you are involved in offshore outsourcing, you have to find all the legal related issues that can come to your way and try and resolve those issues before you sign the dotted lines, you sign the final agreement, involved into the contractual obligation. To avoid any future legal complications, the contracting parties must conform to the local legislation where you are outsourcing. At the time of negotiation of the contract, all executives from both sides must be on board, and the terms of contract should be made clear to each one of them responsible for taking the outsourcing decision. So this has to be absolutely, because you being an outsourcing company, you may not be able to all the time be able to know what are the legal constraints that might come into effect when you have outsourced it. So it is very clear, very absolutely essential for the company to go and make all these points very clear before they outsource, because that might hamper your progress later on, and that can bring in a lot of constraints, hassles to your outsourcing expectations later on. Cultural concerns, cultural stereotypes, and niceties are increasingly playing an important role in determining the fact of outsourcing deal. There are two types of cultural peculiarities. We have been talking and emphasizing more about individual culture, but even more than that, you know each other's culture to a certain extent. It is also very pertinent for you to understand the corporate culture, the organization's culture where you are working in, right? So unless you have a good knowledge mix of your own culture, your vendors, your recipients' culture, and the corporate culture, that might come to your way every now and then. So when this is company's responsibility. When they hire their employee, they have to give their employees the orientation program, all sorts of training to make sure what is the company's expectation and how the company is going to deal in with the client or the vendor. What is their culture? How such culture could be disseminated, could be understood, could be adapted to the other party's point of view, and then try and minimize that level, that gap. Outsourcers often find it difficult to rectify cultural tangles, and that's what we have seen. This is a complex issue, and this cannot be rectified in certain period of time. It takes time, and it's an ongoing process. As you mingle up with each other, as you work, as you experience in the company, the more you experience, more you work with each other, more you know about each other's culture. So if it is not a bookish thing that you go through it and you get to know what is your culture, and I will start behaving with you in that way. It is with experience. It comes with interactions and experience as you get mature working with the company. So outsource and forget cannot work. You cannot simply think that you have outsourced it and this is what your responsibility was, and now you are only responsible to get the services from your provider. You cannot do that, because even if you have outsourced, let's say, your processes which are non-core processes, and you have focused onto your core processes and you are working with it, but core processes cannot run in silos. They always need support from the other processes which are working in tandem with the core processes. So you cannot simply forget what you have outsourced. You have also to keep a constant eye on what kind of services you are getting and how those services can be mixed up with your core processes in order for your overall efficiency of the business processes, overall functioning of your business, and at the end, for your business to accomplish the goal and objectives that you have set. So this is very important for any organization, whether you are outsourcing your core or non-core processes. You have to keep a constant eye on it. Now, the question is, we have been talking about IT offshoring, in generic context, in Indian context, but whatever points we have discussed in BPO outsourcing, IT offshore outsourcing, and in general outsourcing, not necessarily offshore outsourcing, we have to see what is the outsourcing trends which is even more relevant in the current context. So this particular aspect, IT outsourcing trends to watch in 2017, will outline some of those key points, and you will find that some of the key points are still very, very relevant even in the current scenario, in the current context. So you're saying if you have to outsource this year, there are a few changes you ought to make in order to keep up with the growing competition. This is also important for general well-being of your business, and so you have to think about it. How much do you spend in offshore development? Is the spending worth in terms of quality services that you are receiving? If not, you should consider better outsourcing this year. No doubt it is one of the most recent developments in the modern business world. So what are the aspects, the features which are still very, very relevant when we talk about outsourcing or offshore outsourcing in the context of 2017, in the current context. This particular aspect, the focus on centralization of IT delivery systems is still very relevant. Now the question is what it is. With the spotlight on improving business processes, most companies are expected to shift from outsourcing multiple vendors to a single devoted vendor. As a result, centralization of IT system is expected to improve on cost reduction, increasing on productivity, and boost the quality of service. You get what you pay for. Consider seeking services from the best local service provider. It is saying that the focus should be on centralization. You should try and outsource your services as far as possible to a single outsourcing provider, rather than just spreading all your different processes and giving it to the different providers. Centralization brings in more efficiency. And again, the question will come that if you want to give it only to one service provider, you have to make sure that whatever domain you want your services in, the provider should be capable enough to provide you service in all those domains. But yes, when you go for the service providers of capability maturity model 5, those who have got certification for ITIL, right? Or those who are following COBIT model, and if they are working in the various domains, let's say various business processes and domains, they will run all the different business processes. So if it is healthcare, IT related services, you want services for financial technology, whatever it is, if you have to outsource all the different business processes, it is being suggested as a part of current trend in 2017 that you should not disintegrate those processes which are running your business overall and divide it and send it to various different service providers. It is better to keep it centralized, send it to one service provider, because then your service is again going to come in an integrated fashion. It will not be your headache. It will not remain as your responsibility again to reintegrate those business processes and then make sure that these business processes are working together effectively. So these are some of the ideas. Again, it is saying don't go looking for the cheapest IT services in the market, because this is not your, the entire expectation to go and get the service which probably is the most cost-effective service, but you are not able to achieve what you want to achieve by outsourcing your business process. So don't go and look around for the cheapest provider. This has been a common mistake in IT outsourcing. It has been made companies hire far-flung IT experts instead of employing local professionals. So you have to make sure that you are not repeating the common mistake of finding the cheapest service provider, disintegrating your services, processes, and then divide it to the various providers. Also consider retaining local experts. Currently, more businesses are realizing that it is better to hire someone you can trust and feel free to call anytime. So it's said that it is always better for the companies to hire local experts if they want their services getting done. Why not hire someone from your own community rather than contracting out services to a total stranger? So this is an argument. Again, it could be counter-argued that this is not the sole purpose of offshore outsourcing, but it is said that if you can get the expert workforce in your local community, there is no point going and contract people from the far-flung area, right? But again, you can counter-argue this point as well. Increased use of hybrid cloud. It's not increased. It should be increased. Okay, increased use. Yes, that's fine. Increased use of. We have talked about it, right? So the current trend is to increase the use of the concept of hybrid cloud, but unfortunately, hybrid cloud the advantages of hybrid cloud are only limited to the big companies, because you can invest into hybrid cloud only when you have the private cloud, right? And private clouds are available only to the companies which have invested exorbitant amount of money in establishing their private cloud center. If you don't have private cloud center, you need to outsource your work to the public cloud. And where we are saying that the issues in the public cloud, although they are very safe and secure, but at times you can find the issues related to security and privacy, right? So the trend for 2017 is saying that increased use of hybrid cloud could be an ideal model, where you keep the most sensitive business processes in your own data center, and then outsource the non-critical business processes to the service provider, who can maintain your services in the public cloud, right? So this is a trend, and the research also indicates that experts have predicted that by the end of 2017, approximately 50% of IT experts will have employed the use of cloud-based technology. So, the use of cloud-based technology is being largely now been used by the IT experts, because this is one of the convenient ways of storing your data safe and secure. And the remaining percentage, means the remaining 50%, will seek assistance from cloud platforms. So, they have either started using it, or they are seeking support, assistance from IT platforms. So you can understand that most of the business processes which are being outsourced today are being outsourced through cloud technology. And this is largely because most of the business processes are bulky in nature. They have huge amount of data which cannot probably be stored in the physical local servers, and that's why there is a need of cloud technology. The trend for 2017 also indicates that there should be an increase in virtual employees, right? With the advances in technology, you can also hire employees who can not physically be working from the place from where you are running your service outsourcing center, but they can be at remote place. But because you are linked to them and they are probably freelancer, they can provide their services. They can provide you whatever needed out of them in the timely manner, and then you can pay them. So there is no need for employee to come to the office and then render their services. So that could be the possible trend. That's what is expected in today's context, current context, that if you have the right skills, if you have the right domain knowledge, no matter wherever you are, you can still provide service. As a service provider, I can still get your service and you'll be paid for that. And saying this means the future of offshoring is getting even brighter, because you have flexibility in terms of employing people, and it is not the full-time employment, it is on the work contract. So you don't have the obligation, that much of obligation that you have for the full-time employees as an employer. Offshoring is the present trend in getting offshoring is the present trend of most businesses, and this is largely due to the fact of its services offered at the low cost, and that you can achieve through it. Shifting focus to the quality of IT services. This is very important in current scenario, to focus about the IT services that the quality of IT services that you are providing. So the question is, you can provide the quality IT services only when you make sure that you are working with the best IT experts. You have the best talent pool in order to satisfy the business's needs, customers' needs, and you have to make sure that you are doing it. And this is anyway very significant, very pertinent and relevant, because if you want to compete with the other contemporary businesses, you have to make sure that you have with you the right pool of people, right pool of talented people, experts, skilled and experienced people who can work for you in the domain for the business processes you provide services for. So research shows that it is becoming a basic requirement for your business to prosper. So you have to hire people with high skills in programming, technology, domain knowledge, and all, in order to satisfy that need. Shifting focus on the quality of the IT services. So this is the ongoing point from the previous point that we made. Make sure that IT service provider shows you with credential at least some proof that they qualified in what they do. So again, it is about about provider certification. Only when you begin working with best IT support. So all different support and services that you provide, right from software development, system engineering, system design, network support, help desk, backup, so front office and back office services. And for every one of these services, you need highly skilled people. So your focus should be to have the right people with you. 2-in-1, don't just hire a troubleshooter, hire a troubleshooter who can serve the efficiency, serve as an efficiency expert. So you don't need a person only with a particular skill. You need a person who can not only troubleshoot the issue, means who can identify the issue, but will also be able to resolve the issue which was identified. Security is a big problem, and it's still an ongoing problem. It's a bone of contention for the companies even today in 2017, and for that the companies are taking measures to make sure that they are able to resolve the issues related to security. And even in the framework that we have seen, like CMM, COBIT, right, ITIL, there are provisions like if you get certification, you as a service provider, you also get satisfied for the quality of security that you provide. So security is still a problem, a big problem, and that's why the companies are hesitant to outsource their work unless they are extremely sure that their processes are going to be extremely safe and secure in the vendor's hand. So, and as we have discussed, big data analytics. Nowadays, big data is a buzzword. Everywhere you go, you will see the outsourcing, not merely outsourcing, but the big data analytics outsourcing. So what is big data and how we achieve big data? Most of the companies which are operating in the current ecosystem of the companies working together, they compete for how to get the quality service for the big data. And big data is being generated because the stakeholders who are linked with the company, they are inputting bundles of information to the company's server or the clouds where the company data is stored, right? There are a number of examples of the companies where you can think of the data stored by the company is not basically the normal data. Why we call it as a big data? Because it's a massive volume of data which is being generated for the company, right? You take example of any global company or the company operating even in India, and if they are linked with receiving information, let's say from customers, that information is to be stored. Let's say at the global level, you might have heard, I don't know, have you heard of the food retail, Great Britain's largest food retail company called Tesco, let's say, yeah? Tesco, they have their branches in India as well nowadays. They are trying to open their branches. What happens, any other company like Facebook, LinkedIn, any social media, social network, any other company that tech. Every day people come to the website, they sign up, they put their details and all the different information. All these information which are being updated to the company, they need to be stored somewhere. Likewise, Tesco as a supermarket and Britain's largest online retail market, it has to store the information that it receives from the customer, and it issues the customer a club card. Right? It's a loyalty card by which you get offers, discount, vouchers based on whatever you have spent in the supermarket. So Tesco actually store all the data whenever the customer buys products, services from its store or through the website. It stores it in its database, and it stores all the different the frequency and how often that product or the services was purchased by the customer. They're all stored. So this is a kind of a structured data which is stored as in a massive volume in the big data storage cloud computing based platform in Tesco, and from there they analyze that data. They analyze to understand what is the consumer behavioral pattern, how the consumer behaves, what different items, what different products, what various services are being purchased by the customer through that, and then by meaningfully analyze that big data, they are able to provide customers with the various vouchers, discounts, offers. For each pound spent, its policy is that it will give you 1 pence. And even to attract more customers, a few years ago, it started giving 2 pence back to you. So out of 100 passes, like 1 rupee you have spent to Tesco, it will give you back 2 paisa. So in that way, you are effectively spending only 98 pence. So when you have spent about 200 pounds, then you will get the voucher, and also some discount and offers. And those offers and discount will be there for the products and services you buy very frequently. So how the making is taking place in this context, and for that matter, whatever website, social media, different platform you use, when the user basically sign in, sign up, all different information they fed into the system, and that is used to understand the pattern of how frequently, how often you sign in, and what quality, means what different types of information you feed in. So these are different types of structured and unstructured data by which the companies are able to make the informed decision about its stakeholders, and then behave accordingly to maximize the profit, right? So like Tesco, there are many other companies. If you take even the government entity like Indian Railways, Civil Aviation, they all actually, the passengers, the customers, they go, they buy tickets. And unfortunately, in today technological advanced days, you cannot do anything manually, right? Whatever you do, you have to go, either you go through the electronic point of sale or online system, or whatever you do, you have to interact to the system. You have to get through the system. So the company is able to collect, is able to get all different data about you, and then the well-informed decision can be made from that set of structured and unstructured data. So a current research is saying by IDC, a research organization from China, it's saying that 1.8 zettabytes, that is 1.8 trillion gigabytes of information created last year, and will grow by a factor of 9 over the next 5 years. So you can understand what massive amount of data being created is being generated. And one other reason for the creation of big data is also Internet of Things. Have you heard of it? So how Internet of Things also contribute in generating this massive amount of data? What is Internet of Things? When we say this this word, what comes to your mind? How the data is generated through it? Any idea?
Usage of any object can be tracked and recorded into the internet.
Yeah, very correctly said. It is basically, what is Internet of Things? When things or objects start talking to each other, then they also generate massive amount of data, right? So one example of Internet of Things, we can say that, smart cities, a smart house, a smart fridge, there are different examples, right? A smart grid, right? They all work on Internet. And nowadays, a smart fridge, right? They are able to track the expired items kept inside the fridge, and they will alert you that you have to bin this item because it is expired, right? In the same way, let's say you are going to check in a hotel, yeah, and you have wear a smart watch, Apple Watch, yeah. Your air conditioning system in the hotel room is linked with your smart watch, and that is basically the talking of two objects. So my smart watch is talking to the smart air conditioning system, and in that way the two internet-enabled objects are able to track each other, and it will sense how far I am from this particular room where I'm going to check in. And as I come close and I go to check in, by that time, this smart clock will sense my body temperature, and it will inform the air conditioning system, so that when I check into the room, the air conditioning system is exactly as per what my body temperature is, so I don't feel. So how it happens? There is no intervention, human intervention. One object, one smart object is talking to the other smart object, and it is making the ambience so that I don't feel that I'm feeling more cold, or it is not that cold, because it is automatically linked. My body temperature is automatically linked to the air conditioning system. So in this way, huge, massive amount of data is generated. And when these data are generated, they are going to be stored somewhere. Where are you going to store such data? Definitely not in any physical servers. It will be stored somewhere in the cloud. And these are just structured or unstructured data. You need to analyze that data. Who will analyze this big data, massive amount of data which is being generated by human, non-human, smart objects, internet-enabled objects? Who will generate it? And it is not only about analyzing. You need to retrieve meaningful information out of this massive chunk of data that you have. You need experts, right? And that's why business means in businesses today, big data analysts or data scientists are playing a big role. They are coming with a big price tag. And that's why when we say that we are moving from business process outsourcing to knowledge process outsourcing, we are trying to generate the workforce and trying to tap the potential of the people that we have, right? Skilled people, technical people who can really try and do their best to retrieve some meaningful information which could be very useful for the business. And they are data scientists. So for analyzing successfully such data, writing algorithm, retrieving some meaningful information from huge, massive amount of data, you need people who are not only aware of, not only knowing the domain, the domain where they are going to work, but also need to have the good, strong, solid background of mathematics, technology so that they can convert the algorithm into the corresponding program, maths, statistics, analysis, handle the different analytical tools, so they can convert those bundles of data into meaningful piece of information which could be useful for the organization. That's why many companies, like what I have said to you, Tesco or any, like in India also, the government is planning to come up with the smart cities. What is that? The smart houses, right? So these are some of the applications of Internet of Things and big data, and they need people who can really deliver the services. And that's why we are saying that we are going to move toward the knowledge process outsourcing. Let us leave these BPOs, these call centers, to just developing other developing countries, or not so developing country like Bangladesh, Philippines. Let us move and grow up to the level where our real potential can be utilized and we can produce the output where we feel pride of, and we never feel shy by saying that we are just working in a call center or BPO. We can, with all our pride, we can say that we are working in a KPO and I'm a data scientist. So this is how we can make and tap our potential in terms of converting majority of workforce who struggle despite all their knowledge and talent into the pool of talented people who can work for us, and we can develop ourselves as a knowledge process outsourcing hub, a best process outsourcing hub. No matter whatever the outsourcing is, whether it is offshore, whether it is onshore, nearshore, BPO, we want, whatever we do, we want to be best. So let us at the end talk about best sourcing rather than just confining it to any other sourcing that we have talked in the last 5 days. So the implications of all the deliberations that we have over the last 5 days is that we want to become a world leader in knowledge process outsourcing, best process outsourcing. So this is what I wanted to talk to you in today's lecture. That's it. And if you have any questions, we'll go for it. Or if not, then we will give you a break. And in the meantime, we will have a photo session. And when you come back, we will quickly do today's case study, and followed by exams and valedictory session. Yeah?